Hello, I am Bee from Bee's Intuition, but this is my second channel, Bee's Spirituality. So, this is going to be a test. I'm not sure if I'm going to upload this because this is very vulnerable for me. This is a very vulnerable state to be in for me. As you can tell, I'm not wearing makeup, and I am somebody with a skin picking condition. And I recently had a skin picking episode. And so I'm actively trying to heal my skin, sort of recover from all of that. I'm going to be putting on a clay face mask um, while I'm talking to you. Uh, and I guess we'll just see how it goes. Um, yeah, this is honestly very vulnerable for me in multiple ways. Also, I'm sorry if the tripod, like if the camera shakes. It's just my kitty on the tripod, bathing herself currently. It was really cute actually. Before she laid down, she was just sitting there looking up at the screen on my phone, and it was really cute because she's never seen me record this close up before. So, ooh, okay, sorry. I almost thought it was gonna fall, but no, it was just because she shifted a little bit. Um, so actually, cats are part of the topic that I wanted to discuss. This is actually a topic that I've been wanting to discuss for a period of time, but I felt, I don't know. Well, the thing is, I'm going to start mixing up the clay mask while I'm talking with you. I have been struggling with my mental health recently, and I'd say to a certain extent my physical health. And there's just been a lot going on in my life that has also been adding to stress and feelings of inadequacy. I do have therapy tomorrow, so that will be good for me. But I just felt called to talk about animals today. I'll probably talk a little bit about myself and, mixed into it because this is a very vulnerable state for me to be in, and therefore I'll probably be thinking a lot about how I appear right now on camera. I do have the camera screen, well, my phone screen, reflected in the mirror in the background, so I can see that I am in frame, but I can't really see how I look. And so it's not only that I have the skin picking issue, it's not only that I am not wearing makeup, but I also am insecure about my roots coming in. And it's not necessarily because they are gray, but rather where the gray strands are on my head, especially with the light coming through the window. It actually makes me insecure because to me it looks like it gives me a big bald spot in the front of my hairline. And so that adds to me feeling really insecure, as well as like my hair's a mess. I haven't brushed it today yet, so it's kind of just up and out of the way. Well, before I do this, actually, I should probably put on this headband. This is just to kind of get the straggly hairs out of the way so that when I put on my face mask, I'm not gluing any extra hairs to my face or anything. yeah, that'll be fine, I think. But as you can see, these white strands, silver strands, etc., they come through very brightly compared to the rest of my hair. And especially with the sun coming through the window, well, it's not direct sunlight, but you get what I'm saying. It just kind of makes it look like a big bald spot. Thin hair is also something that I'm insecure about. Um, and I overthink my hair as well as my skin and other insecurities, I guess. But anyhow, um, but I feel like might as well kill two birds with one stone. I don't really like that saying. I'm an animal lover, for those who don't know. But in the way of talking about a topic that I really want to talk about, but also experimenting in the way of like me being vulnerable, seeing if I can face myself and my natural state, my unflattering, and that's a whole nother thing too. This is probably an incredibly unflattering angle to be in. I mean, I'm usually afraid of being too close to the camera, typically because of like my skin texture and, you know, the bumps on my skin and whatnot, the spots and whatnot from skin picking. And I guess the good thing about me not wearing any makeup is it doesn't really matter how close or distant I am from the camera. It's sort of unavoidable, and therefore it can't really get any worse, I guess, if you want to put it in those words. So, this is really as vulnerable as I can get, I guess. Um, but so, something that has helped me in terms of maybe getting through difficult mental health periods is animals. I am very grateful to have a wonderful, beautiful, sweet little baby kitty. She's not really a baby, but she is to me. I believe she's officially 11 years old this year, so that's kind of crazy. I got her back when she was just a little baby, just a little bean. She was so tiny. Um, and her name's Scarlett, and I love her. So, the reason why I was, I suppose, influenced or inspired to talk about this subject specifically today, I was on Instagram earlier. Actually, it was my Ease Intuition Instagram account. I'll have it linked below in the description box of this video, more than likely, if I end up, being able to face myself and my insecurities enough to edit and then post this. I'm very skeptical of that just because I've never done this before, and so therefore I do not know how far I will go with that process. But if I do, it will be in the description box below. I actually have to take one of my meds. Hold on one moment. Please, thank you. My clay thingy. Just gotta move that out of the way while I take my medicine, Because on top of my many other health issues, mental and physical, I also have probably gastral reflux. I think it's called GERD as an acronym. sometimes I feel like I'm an old person because ever since my 20s, I feel like I've had conditions that are typically associated with people that are, usually past middle age. But, yeah, whatever. It is what it is. You kind of just got to roll with the punches that life gives you, right? Anywho, going back to um, the topic of this video. So, I have found animals to be very healing. Um, and I try to interact with animals as frequently as possible because of the mental health benefits. And I'm sure there's some physical health benefits because I actually was just watching a video the other day about, it was actually about why humans um, feel the need to pet things, which is, a little bit niche, I suppose, but it was actually really informative and pretty eye opening um, video. And it did touch on briefly that cats purr. Um, a cat's purr actually has healing, regenerative qualities to it because of the hertz. They purr at a frequency of a certain amount of hertz. Um, and I don't remember the exact range or number or numbers, but studies have shown that it can, at the very least, help the healing process for bones and I believe muscle it was. And so, cats purring has physical healing properties that have been studied. Then again, most of the videos that try to educate people nowadays on YouTube do have a lot of AI in them, and sometimes sneakily so. Not to mention how people may use AI to research their videos. So even if the whole thing isn't AI, they still may use AI to research. So take this information with a grain of salt because I do not know how, real or accurate, outdated these studies are, whatnot. Um, and I guess I say that just, to make sure people aren't like, giving up their medication and being like, my cat will heal me. I'm cured. No, I would not recommend that. Take your medicine, please. Um, but, um, again, I'm not a doctor, so I guess do not listen to me either. Anyhow, so, um, I try to interact with cats and animals as often as possible in a positive way. Um, because of the relief I find for mental health and sometimes the good distraction from my physical health as well when I am struggling a little bit extra. And I feel like because I've been more stressed recently, um, and just overwhelmed with a whole bunch of different things in the background, as well as mental and physical health on top of that, um, I I feel like it has been sticking out to me more so recently, kind of like, wow, I'm so lucky to have a cat. Um, and I'm lucky to even live in a place that allows cats in the first place, which is a rarity in this country, unfortunately, because a lot of landlords do not allow people to have any sort of pets, let alone cats, which I personally advocate for that to become changed in the future. I would like to see more housing allow animals, because I think that the benefits for our society outweigh the I was going to say disadvantages, but more so like the cons or drawbacks to allowing people to have pets. Of course, I know in extreme cases of neglect or people not being able to properly care for their animals or make sure that they get the help that they need or the utilities that they need, such as, litter boxes and whatnot. People can neglect and allow their animals to really wreak havoc on property. And I guess that's probably the only reason why landlords don't allow animals. But I am personally of the belief that those circumstances may be rarer than landlords would want to believe or do believe. And again, as a whole, in terms of our society, I think people benefit from animals way more than they do not. Um, but also, it's very rare in America for people who are landlords to have empathy towards their tenants. And so, it's just a shame because I do believe in empathy, I do believe in compassion, and I do believe in sometimes putting our own selfish desires sometimes, or the logical way of thinking. Not everything needs to be measured in terms of, it's going to be difficult for me to have to word this, you know, calculating the pros and cons of a situation and narrowing it down no longer to the point where these tenants are people or that these animals need homes and deserve homes and also help their owners. But like, everything is so dehumanized, in my opinion, nowadays, where it's like the logical reasoning behind not allowing pets outweighs the good for humanity. And that's something I find incredibly saddening about our society in this day and age. Because I do believe that this society has a lot of ways in which it would benefit improvement. And I think that more compassion and not just simply viewing everything through a logical or rational perspective, and sometimes putting aside our own belief systems, our own prejudices, our own biases, can be better for humanity and as a whole. I know that me saying that may be controversial, and not everybody feels that way, and everybody has their own experiences and own opinions, and that's fine, but that's mine. Um, but yeah, there are many benefits to pets and animals, interacting with animals, and all of that. Um, and I felt also like, oh, yes, so I was talking about how I was on Instagram earlier, and I saw a couple of posts that really made me appreciate animals, but not just animals, but specifically the mutually beneficial relationship between animals and humans, and just how healing that and special that can be. And, in this time, I feel like humanity is being overlooked for profit. or rather, in exchange for profit. It's almost like it's no longer worth considering in the equation. Like humanity is no longer considered in that decision making process of allowing or not allowing these types of things. And I find that incredibly saddening. Um, because I feel like society would actually be able to improve and heal a little bit if we did take humanity and compassion and empathy and sympathy into the equation more often. Because I think that the pros of doing those types of things would actually make a great difference and outweigh those cons of those decisions or of those types of decisions, I guess. Um, so, anyways, what am I saying? I am saying, oh, yes, on Instagram, I saw two videos that were, making me consider just how lucky we are to have animals. And I've thought this, many times, but sometimes it takes having the real life evidence in front of your face to really, feel that deeply and be moved by that deeply. And so, the first one, I believe, was a Steve Irwin video, which those are always a blessing whenever they come across my feed. I feel like everybody kind of mutually loves Steve Irwin. But in a lot of ways, I do feel like I don't know. Like I feel like the world has changed so much since people like Steve Irwin were in the public eye and were alive. Um, and I feel like, of course, his family carries on his legacy, which I find a very beautiful thing. But we shouldn't be completely dependent upon the Irwin family to be our only light in this world. Do you know what I'm trying to say? Because we all have that power within us to be the earth angels that we believed Steve to be. We all have that ability, and we all can become disciples or descendants of Steve Irwin in a way. If we chose to, if we were aware of this, even. Um, so it was a very cute video about he was interacting with an orangutan mom, and he was sitting on a branch, and then the mother slowly is approaching him, and she has her baby with her, and she's pretty much trying to show Steve her baby. And I'm pretty sure this was like in the wild. So this could have been an orangutan that never met Steve Irwin before. I'm not so sure. I don't know exactly what the backstory of it was, but it was a beautiful video because he was very cute and he was quite scared at first because a wild animal with a baby is probably one of the most dangerous things to be near, let alone have coming towards you actively. um and it was like a very like close distance as well, like she was literally right beside him. But it was just such a beautiful moment when he realized that she was just trying to get nearer to him, probably to simply just show Steve her baby. And that is one of the most sacred and rare magical occurrences to take place in nature, regardless of who the person is, right? But I do truly believe that the reason why animals naturally gravitated towards him was because he had such an angelic sort of energy and like aura to him, where I would say probably all living creatures felt a sense of unconditional love from him, and therefore they wanted to return that back to him. Um, Most of the time, of course, he did wrangle a few crocs, and so I'm sure not all of his animal experiences were positive, but a good amount of them were, and they were actually actively documented, which is also a whole nother blessing that we have those even till today to look back upon. But we all have the ability to be like Steve Irwin and be sort of, in a way, earth angels and be these beacons of light and hope in the world and for this earth and the animals in it. I don't know if some people just simply aren't aware that we have that ability, if they think that only certain special people are selected to be those types of people. At the end of the day, we are all human and we all have the ability to make choices and choose how we show up for animals, how we treat them, how we care for them, how we advocate for them. And I just wish maybe more people knew this or thought about that so that they could choose to show up in the ways that Steve Irwin had in his lifetime. Because it's almost like, and I see it all the time in these comment sections when it comes to Steve Irwin, everybody's like, there'll never ever be another Steve Irwin. And, the light, the earth or the world kind of went dark after he died. And, you know, nobody can ever compare. Um, in a way, of course, these people are commenting those things with the best of intentions, right? Nobody is meaning anything negative by saying these things. In fact, they think that they are honoring his legacy by commenting these things. However, in my perspective and opinion, it comes across as quite nihilistic and limited in terms of maybe perception or worldview wise. Because again, I do believe that we all have the ability to be like him in our own ways and show up with that same light and compassion and love as he did in his lifetime. And I just find it unfortunate that not everybody either sees that or practices that or believes that. But anyways, this video was so incredibly beautiful, very touching and very magical. And it just made me think that, yeah, he was such an incredible human being. In every video I ever see of him, he has that energy to him, the aura around him of just authenticity, genuity. Is that a word? Genuine character. Somebody who does not show up as a false mask, but rather authentic through and through, and somebody who genuinely cares. And I feel like there's a certain amount of innocence to him as well, or there was. It's just that like look behind the eyes of just like being so real, so vulnerable, so wholesome, and just being genuinely caring and not selfish, very selfless. And I don't know if it's controversial to say, but I personally believe that maybe he was on the spectrum a little bit, but that is probably incredibly um, controversial. And I'm not diagnosing anyone, and I do not have that background in order to diagnose anyone. But just from my experiences with people on the spectrum, and a lot of people's, because typically I don't know about anybody out there who's interacted with people on the spectrum, but most of the people that I have met who are either diagnosed or pre-diagnosed with autism, they have very wholesome energies to them and similar auras in that way. And animals typically tend to gravitate towards them naturally, those types of people. And they tend to trust those types of people, sometimes inherently. And, sometimes on the first meeting with those people, these animals don't even know these people, and yet they trust them instantly. They feel safe around them instantly. And it's such a beautiful thing to witness and encounter. And I do feel like he has a little bit of that energy, which of course could be just a coincidence, but yeah. You just never feel like there's a sense of like a hidden agenda when it comes to Steve Irwin. There's just such a transparency to him in the way that he shows up or did show up. For my personal belief system, though, like I don't really believe in the idea that when one person dies, that they're really gone in the way of their spirit and energy. And, that might be controversial, that might be an unpopular opinion. But I do believe that these energies, once released from their human form, they exist outside of us in a way that we personally typically cannot see, or at least most of us cannot like see and feel in the way that they did when they inhabited their human form. Not to mention, they are still alive in our memories and in our hearts. I just personally believe that when I correct myself and say he was, or, he used to, or to me, it kind of feels a little bit forced from my perspective, just because I personally don't believe that he's gone, which also kind of shows, in a way, that my kind of connects in a way, rather, to my belief about how we all have the ability to embody his energy and show up just like he did. It's just a matter of being aware of that and believing in that and showing up like that. And I would like more people to maybe think that way. I feel like it would only ever benefit the world if we chose to show up like him. And I'm sure, you know, if he still, exists in the ether, is that what it's called? um, in the spirit realm, I'm sure that would make him incredibly happy to know that people are continuing his legacy more than just his family. Because also, they are one family in this huge world that we live in. And they only live in one country, right? So it's like the idea that they are living out his legacy and kind of extending it further than just his lifetime. Although it's an incredibly beautiful, wonderful thing, it's very limited, isn't it? And I think yeah, and I kind of think it's unfortunate that so many people think that because he's gone in the physical realm, that there'll never be another one like him. Which, is true for every person, of course. But I feel like that kind of excludes so many people who are actively maybe rehabilitating animals and doing wildlife conservation just like he did. Or at least being open and receptive to caring for animals in the way that he did, connecting with animals in the way that he did. And I'm sure part of that is due to the lack of maybe media exposure of these people who are still showing up just like he did in a lot of ways, in all parts of the world, of course. But they don't really get that same recognition. And I really just dislike that idea that the world is dark now because he's gone, when we all have the ability to show up like him. And we all have the ability to make this world a better place. I truly do believe that. But yeah, so that was one of the videos I saw on Instagram that just made me really think about just how lucky we are to live in the same world with animals and that we coexist in this lifetime together, and that the connections we can build with other animals is just so special and healing and beneficial for not just the world and the earth and nature and animals, but also for us too. um so what was the other Instagram video? Oh yes, it was a cat distribution. Sorry, sometimes I get tongue tied when I try to say certain words. um it had to do with the cat distribution system. And if you're not familiar with that, that is just pretty much how most people, when they get a cat, it's typically through that cat finding them in a very random way. Sometimes it feels synchronistic, like more than just coincidence, but sort of like fate in a way. And people typically call that the cat distribution system. Um, and kind of like once a cat chooses you, that's pretty much it. That is your cat now. And I find it really silly and really funny and cute. Um, but also to an extent very real in a lot of ways. I know many people who have experienced this cat distribution system and gotten their cats from like very unique situations that they did not foresee happening. And therefore, or rather, to continue, um, It was a video about this guy who I think lived in a van, um, and kind of traveling the world, traveling the country or something. And he came across this very skinny black cat who was very clearly neglected and uncared for in a very random location. And it started with him just simply offering the cat a bowl of water, trying to get it to go in the shade so that it wasn't so hot. And I think eventually feeding that cat. And so the cat immediately sort of adopted this human. And the two of them built a connection very quickly, even with some hesitation and resistance on the human's part. Um, and it was really beautiful to read the comments because there's always, and that's honestly, that's part of the reason why I prefer Instagram typically these days, especially. I'm very grateful that my feed is very positive on Instagram. And I'm sure part of that is because of my page being, tarot is typically associated with more spiritual, empathetic people, I guess. And therefore, I'm sure like it's sort of like an algorithmic thing in that regard, that it probably promotes those types of pages to me like naturally, but also, of course, I interact with those videos the most, and I follow those uh, Instagram pages the most, and of course, that gets in the algorithm as well. Um, but it's nice when you get to see wholesome videos, and then you get to read the comment section and you see wholesome comments, having pretty wholesome conversations, sometimes educational conversations. And those hate comments or those negative comments or those rage bait comments are pretty rare to find on there, in my experience at least, or they're at least easier to ignore, I would say. Because I really don't remember a whole lot of those types of comments when I go on there. I typically have a really good experience, and I typically laugh over like silly pet videos, or I see these really emotionally moving videos, and it just makes me happy. It shifts my mood when I'm feeling down. It helps me to think outside of myself, which is nice when I am very typically hyper focused on my physical appearance. It's nice to just simply take a break from, I guess, my physical vessel and my hyper fixation on what that looks like and how it's perceived. I pretty much get a lot of enjoyment from these videos and on Instagram. Definitely feel free to follow me on there. I do post all of my, um, I usually post part one of my YouTube shorts on there that I upload on my Bees Intuition channel, which is my tarot channel, my main channel. Um, and so if you do follow me on there, you'll probably just only see those posts, as well as like a screenshot of the thumbnails for my face readings and my second channel videos. So I'll probably, if I end up uploading this and all of that, the thumbnail for this video will probably be one of those posts. Um, and I post pretty regularly on there, so if you're annoyed by multiple posts, like, or repetitive posts maybe, it might not be for you, but um, I'd love to just connect with more people, of course, who are people that may think similarly to me, or may care about the things that I care about as well. Because I do a lot of these things, such as my tarot channel, this channel. The reason really that I do these things more than anything is to find community, to find like minded people, and to really connect with them in a way that helps me to feel less alone in the world, as well as the person watching, help them feel less alone in the world. Because, especially sensitive, empathetic souls, I feel like sometimes we can feel so overwhelmed and ignored or unseen, and there's like a lack of validation of our existence and our beliefs and all of that. So it can be a very lonely experience, pretty much, in this world, especially with all of the chaos in the media, chaos we see in our lives around us and in our environments. So it's nice to just connect with other people who enjoy things that are similar, believe things that are similar, and can sort of restore our faith in humanity, so to speak. Anywho, going back to that Instagram video, I saw some really cute comments on that video. Very wholesome video. That man with his moving van, living van, I don't know what it's called. um, he's always traveling, going on adventures with him. It's between him and his little kitty, from what I saw in the video. So very adorable, very wholesome, very sweet. And also another beautiful part of that video, he actually commented, because this video I'm pretty sure was his own upload, I'm pretty sure. And so he commented on said video about how he became sober not too long before coming across this cat. And so that's a whole nother part of the cat distribution system. Some people will argue that these cats come into our lives specifically when we need them the most, even if we don't cognitively or consciously believe that to be the case, or may not see that at first. But yeah, he commented something about his sobriety and how pretty much if he wasn't sober, it may have never happened. He may not have even noticed this cat. He may have not been physically here to help this cat. But because he was sober, he was able to have this beautiful connection with this cat and build this, lifelong friendship with this cat and bond with him in ways that are just really special. And I found that to be incredibly moving. There was another comment that I actually responded to. I'm trying to remember what that comment was. I think it may have just been somebody who was describing their own experiences with the cat distribution system, and pretty much that they found a cat maybe in very interesting circumstances and how it may have improved their life or how they appreciate that cat or something along those lines. A very wholesome comment. Oh, and I think that he mentioned in that comment something along the lines of like, I love my dogs, but cats kind of love in a sort of different way. It's kind of like a different experience. And I feel like I hear that a lot, how, especially people who aren't just specifically just a dog person or just a cat person, how they just simply have a love of animals, or at least they're open to loving other animals out of their comfort zone. They, it's pretty common for those types of people to be like, the experience is different, but it still is fulfilling. The love you receive from a dog, the love you receive from a cat is different, and the experiences of owning each is different, but they are equally fulfilling and precious and special and healing. Honestly, I do think that they are healing. Um, and so I commented on that comment with, I don't even know what to call it. It's sort of just an opinion of mine. Yeah, I'm not really sure what to call it exactly. I guess it's like, it was like a sort of, how do I word that? I guess it was kind of like me thinking outside the box, maybe, or like in a philosophical sort of way about sort of the meaning behind our connection with these animals. And so, my personal opinion is, and this is what I commented, that dogs and cats, they teach us two different lessons, in my opinion, and in my experience. And the first one is, dogs will teach us that we are worthy of receiving unconditional love. And cats, they teach us how to give unconditional love. And I find those to be very special and life-changing experiences that I hope that everybody gets to experience both of them within their lifetime. Because I think those are both really important lessons to learn for ourselves, for the way we interact with the world, and for our own benefit, really. And it's kind of funny in a way, because like I'm thinking to my tarot channel, and how when I'm mentioning things like lessons in tarot readings, and maybe it's just personally my mind frame or mindset perspective, is when lessons are mentioned in tarot readings, I feel like they typically have a little bit more of a negative connotation to them, and not in the way of like lessons are bad, but rather lessons are painful inherently. We think about, and I don't know if anybody out there knows about tarot or card meanings and stuff like that, but there's a tarot card called the Tower, and it is typically very drastic or dramatic change that really shakes things up. And typically we associate that with something really traumatic happening to teach us a lesson, um, or something in our life falling apart in order for it to be rebuilt in a better way, or a healthier way, or a more enlightened way. And so in tarot, I feel like when we talk about lessons, sometimes it's met with a little bit of a sense of fear, because there is that experience and maybe belief that all lessons are inherently painful, are inherently disruptive, are inherently traumatic, because they are lessons, right? Like that's the only way you can learn in some people's perspective, I suppose. But I feel like dogs and cats, they kind of show us that not all lessons are painful, nor are all lessons meant to be painful, I think. And even when I think back to maybe my most traumatizing tower moments in my lifetime, sure, they may have been chaotic and disruptive in the moment when I was actively experiencing and going through them. But when I came out on the other side of those experiences and time had passed, I was able to look back on those experiences and sort of connect the dots of why those things happened and the timing that they did. And I think of all of the positive things that came out of those disruptive and slightly traumatizing experiences of those tower moments. And so, in a way, there's almost a sense of fondness I get for these tower moments of my past, because there's that whole shift in perspective. I'm able to see how these events lined up in order to shift me and my life in a more positive direction. And so, with saying that, I don't think that tower moments are necessarily meant to be traumatizing, or that they're meant to be difficult and painful and, make you miserable. But sometimes it's that discomfort that is typically temporary in order to come out the other side as somebody who is more conscious, more flexible, maybe, more resilient, more experienced, more enlightened, more aware, all of those things. And so I think about Spirit's perspective of all of this too, where it's like, if Spirit is sending us lessons in the form of a tower moment, for example, I don't think Spirit is doing it with a sense of cruelty or unfairness. I think that just because we are human, with human brains, human bodies, we have limited perceptions and perspectives of these things. And so it's very easy, especially depending on how you were raised or socialized growing up. It's very common, I think, for a lot of people to kind of just assume the worst, that we are maybe being punished by God or by Spirit for doing something bad, maybe, or um, yeah, like we're trying to connect the dots in a way that's maybe missing the point. And that's a lot really based on our formative years and experiences there. But I don't think that's necessarily Spirit's intention. And so, and maybe this is more so for myself, but maybe we shouldn't fear those tower moments as much as we do. And maybe we shouldn't suspect the worst when those tower moments happen in our lives, because we may, through that misjudgment, we may be preventing ourselves from seeing the bigger picture, or what Spirit truly intended through these experiences. And, especially when we're going through a difficult time, anyways, like the beginning stages of a tower moment, maybe, I find that maybe it's not super helpful to be so focused on maybe what it means or what it is trying to tell us. Of course, we can dig into that if we want to, and if we feel like that may be helpful, just to gain a more understanding perception, maybe. But where was I going with this? It's a beautiful day today. A little bit on the warmer side, but because of my chronic illness, I have a condition that causes me to sweat a lot. So it's not even that hot really, but because it's me, I sweat in like anything above 40-degree weather most of the time. Um, so I'm not really the best judge of, how hot or cold it is outside or how uncomfortable it is. But it is a beautiful day outside. On these days, I think about my skin picking issue and how I wish that I would let my skin heal enough in order to go outside without being so afraid of being perceived. Being able to kind of just like roll out of bed and go outside without a second thought. I think about that. But as I said in a previous video on this channel, skin picking issues are typically a little bit more complex than we would like to believe they are. Even if we really want to stop, even if we really want to change them and shake those habits, shake those maybe even mindsets that lead to those actions, it's more complex, more complicated than we'd like to believe, I think. Anyhow, going back to the topic. I think, yes, I think I remember where I was going. So, I feel like cats and dogs, and yeah, because of the lessons that they teach us, they are some great examples of why, or not why, but rather great examples that not all lessons are painful. Of course, pain is probably subjective for the most part. Like, what's painful for me may not be painful for you. So I'm sure some people may find receiving unconditional love painful. Some other people may find giving unconditional love painful. But at least generally, it's nice to see that not all lessons are inherently bad or something to be feared or something to be avoided or something to make reparations for, or something that is an indication of how bad we are. But sometimes lessons can be so incredibly healing and peaceful and balancing and healing in ways, yeah, that just aren't painful in the way that we may typically think lessons are supposed to be from a spiritual perspective. And it's good to kind of just realize that, you know, keep that open mind when it comes to lessons, and maybe apply that to even more difficult types of lessons that may be a little bit more painful or a little bit more difficult to move through. But with that being said about my perspective of the lessons that cats and dogs can teach us, I think that animals in general, personally, I believe from a spiritual perspective that they are the closest things, maybe other than, you know, children, maybe, but they are typically the closest thing I can think of to angels. And I guess from a more biblical perspective, angels were really defined by their sort of occupation, I suppose, as messengers. Um, and so I suppose we could look at it that way. That's definitely one perspective of through the um, through the lens of viewing them as angels. I guess we could see them as messengers, and therefore they are great teachers who give us lessons in that way. And those lessons reflect back to us maybe a little bit of how we should perceive ourselves or how we should value ourselves, how we should believe we are worthy and find our inherent value within that. And so I think that's definitely a reason why we should show up with compassion and love and empathy and all of that when it comes to our interactions with animals. But I also have the bigger perspective of like, we should do that, because this is the world we live in. This is the earth that we are inhabiting, and that is a gift. And therefore, we should show our appreciation for it by caring for it in all of its parts, caring for those animals who are part of nature, who are part of the earth that we live in. And I do believe that nature and the earth is one of our most direct connections to spirit. I do feel like it is definitely exterior or physical representations of spirit, and also animals are definitely an extension of that. There's actually a quote from one of my favorite shows. It's called Lark Rise to Candleford. It's a British show. It's a coming of age story for this girl who pretty much sets out from her family in a small town, goes to a bigger town that's nearby, and she pretty much grows up in that town and becomes a young lady. And it's the turn of the century. So end of the 1800s going into the 1900s, and pretty wholesome show overall. I find it very peaceful because of all the nature imagery in it, but also I find it incredibly eye-opening, mind-blowing, mind-opening of the really wise words in some of these episodes. And there's a couple of characters who are particularly sage and wise. And I like the show definitely for that part as well, because that can definitely be helpful in those moments where you feel lost, or you feel like you just need guidance, or you just feel like maybe that everybody's human experiences are so drastically different that, we can't possibly learn from one another, or nobody truly understands us. But a lot of the times in these episodes, they definitely connect to real human experiences and the complexities of human life and the human experience. So, to make a long story short, the final season, I want to say it's like episode 4 of season 4, I believe. I could definitely be wrong on the episode number, but the final season of the show, there's an episode where there is a pastor, or what do they call him? Yeah, pretty much a pastor that is visiting because the main pastor of their church is ill. So they have like sort of like a substitute person stepping in. And the episode kind of shows how this man, who is typically seen as really godlike, quite angelic, really, earth angel vibes, definitely. Everybody sort of perceives him as that, but he's actually hiding anger issues within that, and that's kind of the plot behind that episode, more or less. And eventually that comes to light. And his natural reflex when feeling personally attacked or maybe cornered is to lash out with violence, and that's kind of how he's always been. And it really caused a lot of pain and struggle and turmoil within him and within his life because of that. And so pretty much he shows up in the, as a pastor, and does the most good he can possibly do in his mind to make reparations for the life he has lived and his sort of natural state of being, or natural character, I suppose. Um, and pretty much when everything comes to a head, and there's like that, I suppose, climax or whatever, or the peak of the, the episode, what have you. Where am I going with this? Oh, he says, because in that moment, he has the ability to make a decision if he's going to lash out at somebody because he's triggered to that point. Is he going to lash out in terms of physical violence and just let himself go? Just let that anger rule him in that moment? Or will he be able to hold himself back? And he discovers in that moment that he's able to hold himself back. And maybe he hadn't been able to do that in the past. And therefore, it's a very moving moment in the episode. And he realizes, wow, I actually was able to stop myself. That's amazing. And then the mother, like the main character's mother, says, like, this place has changed you, pretty much saying, like, you've grown, you've changed. You're no longer limited by the things that you thought you would always be limited by throughout your entire life, such as those anger issues, such as that reaction, that natural reaction he has to triggers, acting out with violence and hurting others. He discovers, I guess I really have changed. I guess I really have grown. And I am able to pull myself back from that verge of violence or edge that he could have so easily sort of crossed that threshold into violence. But he was able to hold himself back in that moment because he genuinely did not want to hurt the other person. And, again, this could have been for the very first time. So anyways, he says to, I believe, the main character, Laura, so he says to her, your father, I believe that's how he words it, is like, your father once told me that God is other people. And I didn't know what he meant until now. And now I do. I understand, pretty much, more or less, paraphrasing a little bit. And I really love that quote because in a lot of ways I feel like animals are representations of God, of spirit. And I think that that is a true quote in general too, like other people are, or God is other people. So like each person, each interaction, each animal we come across, we have a choice to show spirit or God or whatever we believe in kindness, and show, if we believe in this idea of like maybe redemption or that final judgment and all of that, and we want to be good people for maybe that reason, or simply just because we care about other people, simply just because we care in making a difference in the world. But if we believe in spirit and we believe in God, I believe that each animal, each person, each circumstance that we have, God is that, in the way of we can show God in those moments, our character, our change, our growth, how we've improved ourselves, improved our own lives, how we've taken maybe the control of who we are and how we show up and the harm that we do or the good that we do. We can show spirit in those moments, the lessons we've learned or haven't learned. But I'm not sure if I'm really making that super clear, but that's kind of like my perspective of things, is like each animal that we come across, we have the ability to be kind, or rather the choice to either be kind or be cruel. Do we wish to spread love or violence and pain? And so, from that spiritual perspective, I think that we can learn a lot through that. And that perspective may help a lot of people that are typically considered spiritual or religious to maybe see things from a different perspective. But yeah, the show is filled with a whole bunch of those types of things. I'm trying to think of the word for it. I know there's like a specific word for, positive, deep, lessons and like sage wisdom. Like there's a specific word for that, I'm sure. I just can't think of it. Like deep sayings, like sayings that really help us connect to one another in terms of our experiences and help us to kind of see things from a more positive perspective, kind of help us to see that we are the ones in control of our lives and how we tend to, or how we choose to show up and the impact we have on others and the world. It's just such a great show for so many reasons, especially in the winter time. There's so much nature imagery throughout the whole show. And especially in the winter time when you're getting those winter blues and you feel like deprived of color and greenery, it's a beautiful show to watch for that, for sure. Also, I'm also not sponsored by these people by any means, but it's on Tubi for free. So if you're interested in that kind of thing, I definitely recommend going to Tubi, because I'm also somebody who believes in accessibility for, like, things, and free video streaming platforms I find to be very important, especially when it comes to accessing things that may help shift human perspectives and points of view in ways that truly make a difference and can affect how we choose to show up in this world for the better. And I feel like it's a perfect example for a show of like what would help us do that as a society. Of course, this is just all my opinion, but yeah. I think I'm going to end this little TED talk of mine when it comes to animals, but maybe I've given you something to ponder. Maybe I've helped somebody out there to think about these things in a more wider perspective, larger perspective, and maybe to help see the spiritual significance in these things. And I hope I can encourage and inspire you to maybe show up as your best self and do your very best to show up as your best self towards others, especially our most vulnerable, such as animals, children, disabled, elderly, etc. But also just to the basic human who doesn't have any of those things, right? Because we all are inherently worthy of respect and dignity and love, especially unconditional love, which is part of the reason why I think it's so important that we learn those lessons through cats and dogs of about unconditional love. Because I do believe that spirit is unconditional love. And I do believe that spirit wants that for us, especially now more than ever. We deserve that. We are inherently worthy of that. And unfortunately, some people want to convince other people that they are not inherently worthy. Or some people may believe deep down that they aren't inherently worthy of this unconditional love. That I believe is what spirit is made of and what this world could be made of if we allowed it to. Anywho, so I guess to make a long story short, be kind, be loving, be supportive, be unconditionally loving towards animals and the world. As much as you can, of course. We are human after all. We will make mistakes. We won't always show up in the kindest of ways. We have our egos, we have our triggers. But I would just maybe suggest or influence maybe people to kind of just be at the very least conscious of the way that we choose to show up and how we respond to situations, trying to view the bigger picture, trying to show up as the change we wish to see in the world in a genuine and authentic way. Because I feel like we are very much capable of making the world a better place if we do just that. Yeah, sorry, this has been a very long one. I think I will upload it though, because I feel like maybe somebody could get something out of this. Even if I do look ugly, even if I do feel super insecure when I'm editing, and I'm like, oh my gosh, look at my ear. You know, it's like sometimes the most random things we get insecure about, right? Anyhow, that is my little talkie. I'm not sure what to call this yet for the thumbnail or the title. I'll see. I'll play it by ear. But anywho, to close this out, I want to just end these videos with some positive affirmations to spread some more positivity in the world and to touch the hearts of those who I may be connecting with. And so, let's think of some good positive affirmations. I hope that you know that you are loved. I hope that you know that you are worthy of unconditional love. Regardless of who you are, where you're from, what you've done, what you haven't done, you are inherently worthy of a lifetime of love and respect, dignity, and kindness. You are beautiful. You are lovable. And you are smart. You are so much more than you give yourself credit for. And I love you, and Spirit loves you. And I do believe that the earth and the world loves you in its own way. Of course, we don't always feel that or see that, but I do believe that. I feel like, honestly, just the physical, like the fact that we are physically here, I feel like that shows that we are worthy and that we are lovable and that we are loved. The fact that we are able to be on this earth and experience life and the things that exist in this world and interact with, the blessings such as animals and whatnot, or even just experience love in general. Kind of reminds me of that saying of like, you know, um, love is everywhere, and typically like it's associated with like seeing hearts on like random things like leaves or rocks or whatever, or something like you'll find that love is all around us, and it's like finding heart-shaped rocks and whatnot, or something's in the shape of a heart just by accident, or coincidence. But yeah, I don't know why I got off topic there, but I wish you all of the best health. I wish you so much abundance and wealth, not just in the physical, more superficial way, but wealth in the way of lifestyle and true fulfillment. Because I think we all deserve to feel wealthy in our own way, in the best way we can, right? I wish you all of the best luck and happiness. I hope that you remember that you are lovable. And I hope that you remember that you're here for a purpose and there is a point to all of this. And it doesn't have to be sad or depressing or, dismal. I think that there's so many things to find the light in, the positivity in. We just simply have to look for it. I wish you good experiences. I wish you a very happy week, a very lucky week. I wish that people will treat you with kindness, in the way that you treat others with kindness. And I hope that you know that you're worthy of love, and I hope that you allow yourself to be loved and supported. I think you are way more supported than you may think you are, because I do believe in the spirit realm, and I believe that we all have our spiritual team trying their best to protect us, to love us, to support us in the ways that we cannot see or maybe feel tactically. I wish you good health, lots of happiness, lots of great experiences, and all the positivity. I'm sure there's many other affirmations I'd like to say, but I simply can't remember them right now. But I really do hope that you feel loved and supported. And I love you, and Spirit loves you. And we both believe in you. We believe in your power. You are powerful. You are so capable of more than you realize. You make a difference in this world, no matter how small you may think it is. It matters, and it makes a difference in the lives of others, in the world in general. I really do believe that acts of kindness, they have a ripple effect. So anytime you show up with that kindness, anytime you show up with compassion and empathy and sympathy for another person or being, that creates a ripple effect and creates even more love, even more positivity in the world. And I hope that you know this and you feel this, and that you don't give up, and that you keep staying hopeful, even if it's hard, even if it feels impossible. The good will always return. The light will always return. We just simply have to do our best to push through the dark moments in those cloudy days. But the sun will return to us always. And spirit is always with us. We are never truly alone. You are never truly alone. I feel you and I see you and I love you. So I can't wait to see you in the next one. I'll see you then.